Okay, we have a big crowd. We have too many questions, but a lot of them are the same. So maybe our candidates can cover the issues very carefully in just one or two. We do have guidelines. I have conducted these candidates meetings for many, many years, and I have found by having strict timelines and timekeepers, we have 2 timekeepers with us today. We have Ben and Francesca. Ben has the 30-second one. Show the candidates that. Now we'll have only 30 seconds to complete your thought. And Francesca has the big stop. Okay? And they are both from the Examiner. We have guidelines that they're going to have 90-second opening and a 2-minute closing statements. Questions have been submitted. We're overwhelmed with these cards of questions. We have found that by submitting them on index cards, it's much quicker and we don't get long statements by the questioner. A candidate, I'm going to read the questions. I may have to edit them a little just for clarity or to get through them quickly. Candidate's answer will be limited to 2 minutes if it's posed to a specific candidate. Candidate from the other party will be allowed a 1-minute response. If a question is posed to all candidates, each candidate will be allowed a 1-minute response. And so we're ready to start. Here's a question for the Democratic slate. So,
should we do our opening statements first? Or?
Oh, sorry.
We worked so hard on that.
I've done it so often, I want to get right to the heart of things. Sorry. Let's have opening statements, and they drew straws to see who gets to speak in order. Ariel Spiro-Cohen, you get to speak first.
Yes. Okay. Moving to Pelham was one of the best choices my husband and I ever made. My family is blessed to live here, and for the past 2 years, I have been honored to serve as trustee. When I was a candidate 2 years ago, I promised to help improve Pelham's environmental practices and broaden avenues of participation in village government. One of my proudest achievements has been delivering on both of these promises through the creation of the village's first ever Sustainability Advisory Board. Comprised of 7 volunteers, the SAB has been working over the last 8 months to tackle important issues including waste, energy, ecology, and transportation. During my time on the board, I've seen that by far our biggest challenge is our aging infrastructure. We have already increased the severity of our problems because real fixes have been delayed far too long. We cannot continue to house our firefighters in a building where rainwater literally gushes through the roof during the storm. Stairs are separating from the building, and there's a mold problem in the basement. The nearby parking structure recently cost us $80,000 in emergency temporary repairs. This cannot continue. We must act now. Any current or former trustee will tell you that it takes a full year to get acquainted with the issues and understand the budget process. Jan Smolin and I have spent countless hours during the last 2 years learning the ins and outs of the village's critical needs and developing real long-term solutions. I'd like to continue putting my knowledge to work for you. I believe my contributions over the last 2 years have value, and I hope you do too. Thank you.
Let's hold the applause. It takes up time. The applause takes up time. Second speaker will be Steve Doka.
Thank you, Maggie. So good evening, neighbors and friends. I'm Steve Doka. Some of you may know me. I'm running for trustee in our village. I'm joined by my fellow running mates, Leroy Marriott, Arthur Long, and Candace Rapole. Together we form, in my view, a very qualified ticket together that's representative of all of Pelham Village. In terms of my background and qualifications, I'm a certified public accountant. I have an MBA in finance. I'm a forensic accountant, to be precise. I work for a global investment bank by day, and have worked in large accounting firms as a consultant in the past. But I've also served for 13 years with the New York State government. I was a Deputy Inspector General for the New York State Inspector General's office. I was a criminal investigator for the New York State Attorney General's office, and I was the head of financial investigations for the MTA Inspector General's office. My family and I moved to Pelham from Queens in 2005 and fell in love with the place. Village has been a great place for us to raise our family and has been good to us, and I am running because I want to keep Pelham a great place for my family, other families in years to come, and I believe, again, my skills are going to be useful to the village board. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, no applause. You're using up the time.
Now you haven't changed.
I haven't changed, no.
Hello, I'm Mike Carpenter, and I'm running for village trustee. I've been to many of these debates, and I've never imagined being up here on this stage. For starters, hosting meet and greets and going door to door trying to convince you to vote for me is not really my thing. Perhaps if I've been to your door, you might agree. But more importantly, I know that joining this board requires a huge commitment. It's a commitment of time away from my family, putting in hours of research because you can't just rely on common sense. I know this because I've spent the last 4 years on the village's planning board analyzing, questioning, and weighing the pros and cons of each new project. By nature, I'm an analytical person. I'm not the guy who goes with his gut. I'm the guy who looks at every detail and double checks to make sure it's right. This has served me well each and every time we dive into the code as a new site plan is before us. I have seen firsthand that Section 106.3, commonly known as the Business District Floating Zone, provides an opportunity to invest in Pelham. We deserve a vibrant downtown. We deserve a firehouse that isn't crumbling. We deserve a village hall that is fully accessible to everyone, and those things require development. That's not just what my 20 years of real estate experience tell me, it's what the data show. It's natural for someone new to the conversation to be concerned about change. I share those concerns. Life is complicated, and there are no easy answers or perfect solutions. We all want the best for our village, and I want to work with everyone to move Pelham forward. Thank you.
Arthur Long, please.
Yes, good evening. I'm Arthur Long. I moved here in 2017 from Manhattan with my wife and 2 high schoolers, and we're very happy here. I'm a banking lawyer by trade, and I hope to be in this village for the next 15 or 20 years. I'm here because I think every election needs a debate on the most important issues. At the outset, I was very concerned about speeding and congestion, particularly near our schools. But as I talked to people, it seemed that one issue above all seemed paramount, because it affects everything else: schools, traffic, parking, and taxes. And that is the pace and the nature, not the existence, but the pace and the nature of development. On investigation, I became concerned. In particular, estimates from the developers on the amounts of cars and new school-age children seemed highly optimistic. You can't just consider additions to the tax base, you have to consider the costs as well. Is it common sense that only one school-age child will live in the 16 apartments considered for Boulevard West? And what about similar large-scale developments in New Rochelle? How will they affect this market? Finally, I want to say something very important. All 4 of us up here take ownership of everything that has our name on it. We stand by our descriptions of the facts, but there has been a statement with our name on it that was unintentionally hurtful to those in Pelham who rent, and that was not our intention. We wish to point out, and we will continue to point out, that if we get this wrong by adding too many new rental apartments, existing apartment renters and existing homeowners will both suffer. I'm very glad we're having this debate so we can reach an informed decision based on all the facts for our common future. Thank you.
Chance Mullen, please.
Thank you. Believe it or not, this is an exciting time to be living in the village of Pelham, because we get to be the folks that overcome a whole host of challenges. We've got a downtown that was just ranked 30th out of 43 by Westchester Magazine. We've got a firehouse and a parking garage that are failing. We've got taxpayers about to absorb the cost of a new school, and we've got seniors getting squeezed out of a village they've lived in their entire lives, and we get to take that on. Now, I don't know what my opponent is going to say the next 2 hours, but I know what she's been saying the last 6 weeks. As Art mentioned, if you're a homeowner, you probably got the flyer that says, beware the renters. If you live in a rental building, you got a different flyer, and that was beware the loss of your parking. If I'm elected mayor, I want to be the opposite of that. I want to be a mayor who recognizes that we're all invested in Pelham. I want you to know that the concerns you have about development are probably the same concerns that I have, as a father of a fourth grader who will be in our schools for the next 8 years. But most importantly, I want you to know that we are trying to do things we've wanted to do for the last half century, on taxes, on our downtown, on traffic, on housing for seniors. And this is not a time to be afraid, it's a time of opportunity. Let's move forward. Thank you.
Whoa. Candace Ripoll, please.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here to hear about these most interesting and concerning issues that are facing the village at this time. My name is Candace Ripoll, and I am your mayoral candidate for the village of Pelham. I have been here for 15 years, raising my family. Prior to coming to Pelham and getting into my volunteer experience, I was a career woman. I have been involved in just about every capacity and organization that this close, tight-knit community has to offer, and I have taken leadership roles at about every turn. I am a big believer in collaborative work, communication, and the art of understanding that decisions cannot be made in a unilateral fashion. I'm sitting here because I really believe that my talents as a leader can be well served right here for our village at this very crossroads time. I just want to make a point of saying that when you talk about fear-mongering, there can also be a fear of timing. Now, quick is not always the answer. When you have something that has been in place, as my opponent might say, for 50 years, I'm not quite sure why 7 people around a table needs to make every decision for moving Pelham in the future based on 7 people. We are a community that needs to have involvement, and I stand by that, and I do appreciate your time.
Oh, come on, Leroy Marriott, please.
Thank you. I'm Leroy Marriott, for those who don't know me. Before I start my time, I would like to thank Maggie, the Pelham Examiner, the Pelham Plus, and most of all, the residents that showed up tonight. So thank you. Thank you very much. For you of those who don't know me, I'm a lifelong resident in Pelham. I've only been in Pelham 58 years. My grandparents on both sides came to Pelham in the early 1900s. My mother graduated Pelham High School. My sisters graduated Pelham High School. I graduated Pelham High School. My children graduated high school. I still have a child in high school. What does this mean? This means I know Pelham. And I know what's going on is not what Pelham is about. There's a team here that we've assembled that's knowledgeable and smart. I got a phone call one day because they said, Leroy, we need you. We need somebody that knows Pelham, somebody that knows what's going on, somebody that knows what's happened and what's not happening. I know what's going on. I know what has happened. And on top of that, I've got to mention, I served this village for 20 years as a police officer. Pelham has to stay Pelham. And that's why we're here, and that's the only reason why we're here. Not because we're Republicans, not because we're village party candidates, and not because we're Democrats. We're here for Pelham.
Wait a minute. Wait, we have one more. Lisa Hill-Wright.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Hill-Reese, and I'm running for village trustee. I was raised to believe that building communities and making small changes at the local level is how you influence what's happening on a global level. You make the world better by starting right next door. I moved my little family to this village in 2013 with that in mind, and immediately joined the Junior League of Pelham, equipped with energy, a desire to lead and collaborate, and years of communications and management expertise. After 5 years in the league, including a year as president, I've learned a lot about the landscape of Pelham, and I've worked with many of you who have made Pelham so unique. I also started to recognize the challenges we face, especially in the downtown business district. Among the charming Tudor buildings and shops and restaurants I hold very dear, I noticed the number of vacant lots, empty storefronts, and decrepit gas stations that dot the stretch between the library and Lincoln, and I wanted to do more to help. This led me to pursue an active role in our village government, and I am honored to have been appointed to the village's Sustainability Advisory Board last year. This new board is ensuring that Pelham is at the forefront of local sustainability practices, making the world better by starting next door. And now I'm here, sitting before all of you, my community, asking you to listen to the answers to the hard questions tonight. I am up here feeling hopeful, optimistic, and excited about the future of Pelham. And I am ready to work tirelessly to make the important choices that will push Pelham forward while preserving the aspects of the village we all love. Thank you.
Okay, we have the opening statement. Thank you all. Now we'll get to questions. I have a handful of questions that are all about the developments, okay? And they're different ways that people ask about the proposed developments, the ones that have been approved, the ones that might be approved, the ones that are in the process of approval. I think what I'm going to do is read all of the questions and then let individuals see how we might answer them, because I think there are some people that might want to answer particular parts of the question. Okay? Now, Chris Gallagher of 153 Cliff Avenue, he is more concerned about the revenues against potential costs, including assumptions about the schools and infrastructure. Valerie Coleman-Michi, she wants to know if these developments are going to lower our taxes. Gary Heyer, what will the impact be on the tax burden? And then there are questions like, if you don't support all the developments, or you want to slow them down, what are you going to do about the problems at the firehouse? What are you going to do about the parking decks, which require major, major repairs? And how will that be financed? And that's from Joe Marty. I'm sorry, I should have told you that the one on the tax burden was from Gary Heyer on 4th Avenue. Okay. Mark Burgess, he wants to know about, you want no new development? He asked this in particular of Mr. Long. Do you want no development? And some people have said that the projects are too big. The developers say they have to be that big and to be economically viable. This is a question from Liz Massey for Steve Doka. Do you have a plan that you would get developers to follow if you don't like some of the plans that have been put forward? Yeah. And Ashley Matz asks, again, what would your plan be for the firehouse and the parking garage problems and still stay within the tax cap that's required by the state? Now, let's see.
For me, Maggie? Or?
No, no, that could be for anybody. So those are some of the areas. I think all of you are equipped to answer any and all of them. But I think let's start with the last one. Let me ask Ms. Rapol, how would you finance the problems with the firehouse and the parking decks if you weren't going to do it with development?
Well, I never said that we wouldn't do it with the development. In fact, this team is absolutely pro-development. I think the reason that I'm sitting here right now is because of 2 years ago that we're all hearing in this room right now about the BDFC was proposed, and that was the election that put in place. We voted it in. Basically, we agreed that there would be a building floating zone, which is being used to stimulate the downtown to do development. This is my concern. I think that within the regular zoning laws, we can, in fact, make things work. And I think that we have to take a careful scrutiny at the budget, at the infrastructure, and see where we're going within a plan. That's where my team, with my attorney, my detective who has served within the different services with the police and is very familiar with the services of the firehouse as well, and Steve Doka, who is our very formidable budget person.
Do I get 2 minutes or 1 minute?
Take one, and we'll see.
Okay. Okay, there's a lot to say. So let me kind of back up a little bit and explain the BDFZ. So the BDFZ was written over 14 months by the board before me and Ariel joined. It was written by Mayor Volpe. It's interesting. He was the boogeyman back then, and now I'm the boogeyman. So over the last 2 years, we've approved only 3 projects. And the things to understand, it's discretionary zoning that allows buildings up to 60 feet or 65 feet if it's senior housing. The current buildings on Fifth Avenue, those 2 rental buildings, are 66 feet. So no one's talking about high rises. Second, every project that comes before the board gets a full review by the Architectural Review Board, the Planning Board, by our professional consultants and engineers. So when we talk about these studies, these are not being done by just the developers. They're being done by your neighbors. And additionally, after those reviews get done, they come before the public. 101 Wolf's Lane was in front of the public for 10 months. We rented out the townhouse so that you could come and participate. Thank you.
Mr. Long, on the whole issue of development and
Yes.
the firehouse needs and the parking deck, and if you don't have development, what are you going to do?
Okay, can I fold that into the one that was asked of me about whether I'm against all development?
Right, yes.
Okay, all right. So the answer to the first question is I am not against all development. I think you should know that whoever wins this election, there are going to be 79 new units built. There are 16 at Boulevard West, which are being built, and there are 63 right now on 101 Wolf's Lane, for which site approval has been granted. I think we'd be buying us a lawsuit to try to do anything about that. So we are in favor of development. It is the pace, and as I said, the nature of development. In terms of the firehouse, and this goes to a larger question, the flavor of the day in Westchester County right now is this mixed-use rental buildings. There are thousands of them planned in New Rochelle, just a stone's throw away. I spent a lot of time in the financial crisis because I was a banking lawyer, knowing what happens when the flavor of the day in real estate goes sour. So I'll be very quick. We would propose development of condos. It's interesting, last public meeting, 8 Boulevard West was said is going to be turning into a condo. So there is going to be a market for condos here, and I think that's a more prudent way of doing it, and that's the sort of development that will get you a firehouse. Thank you.
Lisa.
Sure. Thanks, Maggie. We're not pro fast development. We're not throwing up high rises all over Pelham. And what I see happening in town is that preservation and progress really don't have to compete. And what's happening right now doesn't feel to me that it's preservation when I see these empty lots and these decrepit gas stations. We're hoping that these developments increase foot traffic in our downtown and bring in retail establishments that we can all enjoy. And we're relying on years of research and many studies. So I defer if anyone else wants to add on to that.
I just got to, Maggie threw us off.
Wait a minute.
Of course, she said anybody wants to add.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I had a little bit of time left, and I wanted. We're not allowed to do that.
Finish your time. Finish your time.
Just finish your time.
10 seconds left. But I just wanted to, reiterate what Shan said is that the board has invited the public to every meeting about these buildings. It's not 7 people in a room making these decisions, and slow development is what we are for as well.
Steve?
I'd like to say something,
Wait,
Maggie, one second,
Leroy,
because
it's not your turn.
Maggie, you've thrown the pace off. We had distinct rules
That's
tonight,
all
so
right.
everybody knows that questions were supposed to be asked, and you had 2 minutes and then a 60-second rebuttal. It's screwing up the whole timing of this. So instead of a 2-minute rebuttal, she was held to 60 seconds. And I think we have to get back to the rules so we can properly address these issues.
These
It
are
can't be a free-for-all up
responses.
here.
Those questions were asked to the group.
They were asked
Not
to the
an
group.
individual. Thus, it would be 1 minute per candidate.
Okay.
2 minutes,
Thank you.
Okay, so it's Steve's turn.
Just to
Was
reiterate
that asked
what
to-
my fellow running mates mentioned, we are for development. We are for economically sound development, that is, development that will sustain itself, meaning it's not going to create a tax burden for the existing residents and taxpayers in the village. What I would say with respect to the firehouse, as I understand it, there was steps taken to have it declared as a national, or not a national, but a historic site, which would bring funding to the firehouse. And further, there was a group, a benefactor, that offered to put new windows into it. I think there are other options. We are for development, but I have to tell everyone here, there are vast differences in the way taxes are applied to homesteads and condos versus rental apartments. And the rental apartments bring in literally a third of what a homestead-based unit will bring in.
Ariel.
Hi. I just also want to say that, first of all, having been on the board in the past 2 years and reviewing each of these proposals as they come in, this is a very slow process. Nothing just gets rubber stamped. It is definitely a give and take with the applicant who comes in. And it also goes through a thorough review process with the process that is set up, which is the planning board and the architectural review board. The other piece, and there are plenty of times that we have, open for the public for comment. But the more importantly, I think that it's, I'm sorry, first of all, the firehouse, the issues are, from my understanding, the issues are beyond new windows and any sort of Band-Aid repair that have been done in the past, anything like that has been done in the past. We need bigger fixes than this. It is not going to last us enough time to be able to, it's a waste of taxpayer money to throw Band-Aids at problems. You really have to resolve the problem, the root of the problem.
All right, Leroy.
We are all in agreement, we need a fire department, police annex, and even a village hall. It's not going to be easy to get the funds, but like Steve said, when you use homestead-based units, a lot of people, you don't know what that means, make these developers condos and co-ops. That's what brings more tax dollars in. As far as somebody saying a decrepit gas station, a year ago, that gas station was owned and run by Pelham people for the last 40 years. It was bought from them. It has become a decrepit one because the developer chose to close it down. We are for development, but I'm not for development like 8 Boulevard that is so out of place and circumvented the zoning board. There's no setbacks. It's too high. It's ugly. If you live on Marquand and you're here tonight, I apologize for Pelham. Thank you.
Wait. We don't applaud. Mike Carpenter, please.
Thanks, Maggie. If you can think back a little bit to the mid-2000s, mid to late 2000s, this country went through one of the biggest housing booms it's ever seen. And what did Pelham get out of that? We got vacant lots, decrepit gas stations, and empty storefronts. Since the BDFC has been proposed, we've actually had 2 applicants before us. The third applicant that Chance referenced, 185 Lincoln, was done under 106.4, which is our cluster subdivision law and not the BDFC. One project's actually being built. One is being approved, and if we're lucky enough, they'll actually get out of the ground. They have not yet pulled the permit, and who knows, things can change tomorrow. Interest rates go up, financing can dry up. We don't know if that's going to happen or not. So in 2 years, we have 1 project. Pelham deserves better.
All right, I'm going to, wait, stop. Because I go to all these meetings and everything, I am going to ask for some specifics here because I think you deserve them. Mr. Mullen, would you tell us how much you are asking those 4 developers for upfront payments for the firehouse and the parking deck?
Absolutely, thank you. So we have a range right now. We have everywhere between, I think, $48 million in investment up to $70 million in investment that we could get, or maybe it's 65. Additionally, we would get $10 million in value, roughly, for the deal. We would get a new village hall, police department, and firehouse, potentially, depending on which one we choose. We would get retail space. One of the developers is talking about putting in gallery space for the arts center.
Yeah, but how much would you want them to pay up front to repair the firehouse and the parking decks?
$10 million. $10 million that would be used for that.
And part of that would be paid over time, and...
No, in addition to that, we are also negotiating a fair share fee. So right now, that's somewhere around anywhere, I think the lowest bid is somewhere around $800,000 up to about $1.1 million, somewhere in that ballpark. But that would be paid over time. And what we really want is a down payment up front so that they're sort of locked in with us no matter what happens, if that makes sense.
Okay, this was all described at last night's meeting. You can watch it on...
May we respond to that? Because...
Yes.
Okay, just a couple of points. There is going to be an upfront payment if these proposals go through. However, you cannot look at an upfront payment in isolation, nor can you look for the fact that the developer is going to, quote-unquote, build us a firehouse. Developers do not continue to go into business by giving away free firehouses. Many of the proposals also have things which are called pilots, payment in lieu of taxes, in which is basically, it's not that different from the Amazon deal or smaller things, where the municipality will give something back, and in other words, it will not charge the full freight on real estate taxes as consideration for the upfront payment. This is a deal. The other thing that you do have to bear in mind in terms of costs is the grossly optimistic view of the developers on the number of school-age children, because it costs around $20,000 to $25,000 to educate children in our schools. And from what I have seen of one child in the 15 rooms, that does not make a lot of sense to me, and that's a cost you have to factor in as well.
So I just want to say, so is your plan to bond out for it? Because Mount Kisco did it for $10 million.
Can we just go back and forth, because I would like to say something.
I would like to understand what their plan is.
Wait.
Well, then ask the question.
Wait.
Okay. Please ask them what their plan is.
Wait.
What are the costs for the schools? No one has answered that.
Yes, the developers have. The developers have given numbers for their estimates for schools.
Maggie, can I have 30
It has
seconds,
been
please?
compared to the Marbury project. It has been compared to other projects elsewhere in the county. It's all on the website. I'm sorry. It's
Can I
all
please have 30
out
seconds?
there.
Jersey as well.
It's all
study that's
there.
I think we were going to have
Mr. Duca, if you would like to argue with the developers' estimates on the schools, please do that, and then we will have someone on this side talk about the schools.
Can I please have 30 seconds? Can I please have 30 seconds to address the school estimates?
You changed the rules. It's okay.
It's okay, just let it be, let it
It's
be.
okay. I think
There was a question here about the schools.
we're having a healthy debate. Let's just do it. I think Steve has very good understanding of these studies that
So-
are in odd parts of New Jersey and elsewhere. I
Okay.
think he can speak to this.
There's a
So,
question here about the
I spoke with
schools.
a number of the developers, and look, I'll tell you this. Sorry. I spoke to a number of the developers, and what I would tell you is nothing in life is free, okay? If you believe that, then you believe in Santa Claus coming down the chimney, okay? The cost is going to be embedded somewhere in the project. Ultimately, the taxpayers are going to foot the bill. That said, I will tell you, the developers need to make money, and we can reach an arrangement with them where they benefit and the village benefits, okay? But exactly where that equilibrium point is the magic sort of recipe or sauce that has to be reached. I heard the word used again and again, we deserve this, we deserve that. I agree, we want certain things. Like I would tell my son, he might say he deserves a new iPhone. I would tell him we can't afford it. Okay, so what I would tell you, you have to manage your budget within the constraints of your revenues. And this is fiscal responsibility. And we can't live in a world of pipe dreams. Okay, that said, there are ways of achieving our goals. Okay, sorry.
All right, is there someone on this side that would like to talk about the schools?
Well, I'll talk about the schools, but, you know, the RFP process is not a mystery. It's not giving away something for free. We're giving, it's municipal land in trade for cash now, cash in the future. The school impact, sure. In the planning board, we are presented for every project a school impact study paid for by the developer. That's true. Also, we get to hire an advisor that helps us say whether or not that report is valid or has questions. Every report that I've seen has been very conservative. They've taken the number of students in the school system, the total budget, and that's how they get to a per pupil number. Now, we all know that by adding one kid to the schools, the marginal cost is not, that's not how you would do it. You don't add a student and have to add an entire additional teacher. We take these things very seriously at that level. At the planning board level, we look at it, we do due diligence, and we weigh the pros and cons to make sure that every project we approve or recommend for approval is a net benefit to the village.
Okay, I think this has been enough on the developments for a while. You'll talk about it in answer to other questions. Let's switch gears entirely. We have a question from Laura Caruso of 15 Chestnut Avenue. She reminds us that recreational marijuana use may come to pass in New York State, and that Pleasantville, I believe it's Pleasantville, yes, has taken action where the village board passed a local law prohibiting the sale of marijuana in their downtown, regardless of the state law. They've already taken that action, even though this has not happened. Does anyone on the board want to comment on what you think should happen in Pelham?
Yes, I would support that. I don't think we should be selling pot in Pelham. And I think that if somebody needs it for a medical purpose, they can go to another community and get it. That's my point.
Is there anyone on the other side that wants to comment on this, or pass?
I honestly don't think that that's a Pelham issue right now, and I'm sure we will all come to agreement on it, but we're not here to find out if we can use recreational marijuana tonight.
We're not
here
talking about that.
Pelham
She's talking
and the
about a
schools.
law.
Excuse me?
I think we'd agree with Mr. Mullen on that one.
Yeah, no. It's not we're here tonight.
Okay, we have Danny Walsh of 135 Fifth Avenue, who says he's turning 18 and the lots are overstocked, and where can he park his car? All right, Ariel.
Sure. Well, congratulations on turning 18, and congratulations on being able to have a car. Parking is always an issue in this town. There's no denying that. I think that there are several things here that we need to think about, and we need to think about it through a 21st century lens when we think about our downtown and when we think are currently, municipal lots, and any of the development that we pursue would, in our best interest, to make sure that there are available parking for residents with permits. We know that's something that is highly desired here. On the other hand, I think we also need to think about how we move people in Pelham, not just how we move cars. A lot of forward-thinking communities now, there's a huge new field of transportation planning that really thinks deeply about moving people rather than just cars.
All right, so Danny, you're not allowed to own a car. So what the problem here is, Danny lives at 135 Fifth Avenue. There was never a problem parking for the residents of 125, 135, and 214 Fifth Avenue. They parked in lots 2 and 3. That's the corner of 3rd Street and 5th Avenue and 6th Avenue and 6th Street. Those lots are oversold. If you moved in tomorrow and asked for a permit, you will be told by Terry, I'm sorry, there are no permits in those lots. You have to park a half mile away in Lot 7, which is behind Sparks. The new developments are going to take 220 parking spaces away. They're going to bring back new ones, but not enough. The people can't park now. I was in that lot the other night. There are commercial vehicles with out-of-state plates that are given permit parking passes over our residents. For people who live on 5th Avenue, you won't have a parking space. The new developers' numbers on parking do not add up.
And I think somebody who's in an elected office will look into that. Okay, let's move on.
I would love to respond, actually.
No, you can look into it. Okay, Leroy Marriott. Leroy.
Rules. Go ahead.
Leroy.
Whoever's streaming this video on the internet, their audio is not working. Whoever the streamer is in the room, fix the audio on your camera. It's not working.
Leroy Marriott, this is a question from Zaira Ferrara, 201 Highbrook, and a similar question from Maria Roselle. What do the fire department and police department need to keep meeting the needs of the community, and especially as we get the new developments?
Well, I can tell you, we have a great fire department. We have nice fire engines, good rigs, good employees. Yes, the firehouse needs work. As far as the police department goes, everybody should know that the police department has been understaffed since the merger of the two villages from 1975. There were more police officers in 1982 on the streets of Pelham than there are now. There are more police officers when I was a police officer 16 years ago than there are now. You need staff. That's what you need. And you may not know this, but like I'm telling you, our police department is understaffed. And you're going to need more school crossing guards, and you're going to need more police officers if you bring in more people, and you bring in more students, and you bring in more cars, because there's going to be more domestic violence, there's going to be more first aid. You're laughing? We respond to probably 35% of domestic violence calls if you look at our records. There's going to be more first aid, more responses. You think people are going to live in the buildings and you're never going to need a police officer for anything? You're going to need more than you can imagine. But what I'm telling you now, in answer to the question, we are understaffed. That's the answer to the question.
And you are the liaison to the police.
I am the liaison to the fire department. Here's what they need.
Sorry.
They need to be treated like they're not liabilities, they're assets. That's what we need to do. That is how you get a 5-year deal with the fire department, which is what I got and was ratified by the board last night. That 5-year deal will push off the risk of arbitration, which costs $40,000 to $80,000 every time we go into it for the next 5 years. Because for the last 2 years, I have not treated them like liabilities. I've treated them like the people who will respond to us when we need them. If your teenager overdoses on drugs behind one of our establishments, they're the ones that save them. If you get into a car accident on the hutch, they're the ones that are there. They're not just fighting fires. They respond to 850 calls a year. So we have to actually preserve them as well.
Okay. I have several questions about the budget. To Candace Rapole, this is from Julie Fuller Nakayama, 405 8th Avenue. Which budget item in the last 2 years would you want to change, reallocate, or eliminate, and why? Hang on, wait a minute. This is for Mr. Mullen. Thyra Roth of One Pell Place believes that we have not had a balanced budget for the past 2 years, forcing us to dip into savings to make ends meet. Why haven't we had a balanced budget? What do you plan to do? And Melissa Eustace of 108 Monterey Avenue says, how do you both propose that we stay under our tax cap given our infrastructure needs? So starting with Ms. Rapole.
Well, I certainly agree that the budget needs to be looked at line by line and scrutinized, and I'm also going to recognize that New York State puts a lot of mandates on the village and that the room for managing it is tight. I will tell you that with the development and the promise of new revenues coming in, the hope of all of these upfront fees and whatnot, I think has been what's been kind of driving the whole thing. And I have to say, I'm not so comfortable with the idea of going into the general fund. However, I don't think the situation is as dire as in a 2 to 3 year danger zone, and I would prefer that versus going over the tax cap that was suggested by my opponents on last year's budget. So I suggest staying within the tax cap and scrutinizing the budget, and that's why we have the perfect specialists on this team. It's not the mayor show. It is about a collaborative team that is well-informed, educated, and has an eye to the issues. And I think that's exactly what we can bring to the village.
There's a lot to unpack there. So first of all, let's talk about the budget. So the village has stayed under the tax cap for the last 8 years. Now, last year's budget, the tax cap was 2.48%. The original budget that was delivered to the board came in at 9%. So we spent months cutting it down, cutting it down, cutting it down, until we got to a point where we were still about $200,000 away. Now, because everybody talks about the tax cap as though it's 2%, when the reality it was 2.48%, the rest of the board decided, let's take another $50,000 than we need in order to stay under the tax cap. You will be happy to know that there were 2 people who voted against last year's budget because we felt that they were pulling too much reserves from and plugging holes with it. Myself and Trustee Spira-Cohen. So we believe that we need this investment to come in. Otherwise, if we have to take out a big bond, you should know, the tax cap is gone. We don't get to exclude big bonds from our budget when figuring out the tax cap. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Trying to read ahead here. Okay, we're going to turn to the environment. This is from Marianne Joyce. What have you done or what will you do to move Pelham towards a net zero carbon emissions fossil fuel free future, to preserve a livable, sustainable environment for our children and our children's children? And Anna Rickle, 222 Loring Avenue, asks, given the climate change crisis, how will you lead our village in the area of sustainability? Since we heard from Ariel a bit in her opening statement, I'd like to have someone from the other side talk about sustainability and the environment. Who would like to?
So my entire slate believes in sustainability. I think the environment is a big issue for each one of us here, for our children, for our grandchildren, and generations to come. I think the generations before us have probably been abusive to the environment, and I think it's time now that we take steps to pull some of that back. That said, what I would say, you need to have funds to sort of implement some of the projects that you would like, for example, solar panels, et cetera. And I could tell you just from some of the work I do professionally that these projects often take a long time to produce a return. The solar panels are not quite there yet. Certainly at, this part of the U.S., if we're in Florida, it might be a little different, but it's a very complicated question. That said, I think getting rid of plastic bags, plastic straws, et cetera, is an important step that we should partner with our shops, et cetera, in eliminating.
And to that, we'd add plastic water bottles.
Cheers.
Maggie, if you don't mind, I'd like to start, and then I might just pass on to these guys next to me because we all have a little bit to say about this. We passed Solarized Pelham last year, started in Pelham, and 42 new homes in the village got solar panels at no cost to the village. We're also looking at buildings that are no or low emissions with green roofs and LEED level insulation, and so we're talking to developers on the slate right now about these issues. I want to just pass on to, I know Mike got a solar panel.
Love them. They're great.
Tell us about the returns on the solar panels.
I've had them for 3 months, and I already produce more energy than I'm using, so I can't wait for July. But I think Ariel, sustainability is really Ariel's bailiwick.
Yeah, I was really happy with the Solarized Pelham effort. I think we had a great community effort involved last year with Solarized Pelham. Collectively, 264 kilowatts were produced by panels collectively around the village. That is like taking 50 cars per year off of the road in terms of emissions. It does make an impact, and there are many more things that we can be doing, but I'm very happy to have helped accomplish that one.
And I just want to mention, come to the Sustainability Advisory Board meetings. They're the first Monday of every month, and we talk a lot about what we're doing.
Yes, we have the Community Choice Aggregation program through Sustainable Westchester, thanks to the current Deputy Mayor, Adam Kagan, who enrolled the village, and currently that is through renewable sources as well. So residents are automatically enrolled in that program, and not only is it more environmental source of energy, but it also, the costs are considerable too, this cost savings.
Any more on the environment on the other side? No ideas, Leroy?
Well, I'd like to say something. Leroy, excuse me.
I go by the rules, and I shared my ideas.
Okay, fine.
I just want to say that we definitely are on the side of the environment, and we for surely would welcome to have the Sustainability Advisory Board continue under our administration.
With that, I'd like to know what green space is being provided by the developers.
Great.
They all have.
That's great.
They all
Can I answer
have.
that question?
They all, no, he can go to the website. He can go to the website and find out.
If anyone has that question, I'm dying to tell you.
He can go to the website and find out what the plans have for green space. Okay, this next question to the two mayoral candidates. What will you prioritize first in your initial month if you are elected mayor, Ms. Ripple?
Well, I'm going to bring up the BDFC again because I am believing that the future of Pelham is really dependent upon the continuation with it or not. I'm going to tell you, with all due respect, I understand that there are meetings where community members are invited. To be engaged is so important, and I understand that. But when you sit on a board and you are a mayor and a board of trustees, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your community first, not a developer. I am sitting here because of this BDFZ, and by their own administration, the people before us, not I, put as their primary example of the BDFC this building. This is representing revitalization. This is why I feel like we have to get to the core of the issue and recognize why we're here. It's really very simple to me. I would be very active in seeing the buildings as are coming and being cautious about what's moving forward.
What would be your first priority as mayor?
Sure, there's 4. First, we have to choose an RFP developer. We have to choose them and then go into a 60-day negotiation. By the way, we're just halfway through this process. After we negotiate that 60 days and we get a deal, we're going to present it to you, present it to the board, to the public. You will be able to weigh in and tell us if we should do it or not. And if we don't want to do it, we can do their plan. The second thing, we have a negotiation with the PD right now, the police department, that is close, but it might tip toward arbitration soon. The third thing, I'm going to order all of our chiefs to do succession plans for their departments that I want in the first 3 months, because one of the things we've been dealing with for the last 2 years is we keep getting caught flat-footed as people retire, and that we're not able to plug those holes, and it increases our budget. The fourth thing, the budget itself. We will literally be starting the budget March 28th before the next mayor is sworn in. Those are the things.
I'm sorry, I should have said that question was from Marisa Panzani, 217 Highbrook Avenue North. Okay, this is from John Casone, a question for Mr. Mullen. You are an executive with the Ford Foundation?
I'm not an executive.
Is there a possibility that you may be transferred during your term if elected mayor?
No, I won't. So I'm a talent development specialist at Ford Foundation. I develop and support staff, and I onboard staff for employees in 11 different countries around the world. But I am based in New York City, and I'm staying in Pelham.
Okay, Maura Curtin, 29 Chestnut Avenue, to the other side here. What specific proposals do you have to improve support for our downtown businesses? Who would like to start that? Mr. Long?
Yes, well, one of the nice things about this election is actually you go out and you meet people and hear their ideas. We spoke to a very energetic young business owner who came in here, has put a lot of money into a particular institution, and I think he was probably as disappointed in the nature of the downtown as I think many other people are here. He did not think that perhaps increasing the size of the population through development was a great thing. He pointed out there are plenty of municipalities that make their downtowns prettier, not just at Christmas. I love Christmas here because of the wreaths, but we could do that year-round. We could have better lighting. We can have music. There are any number of things that we can do. The other thing I think people should know is the state of the downtown is probably a function of lack of demand for services. And it is also because I talked to one of our meter maids who had the same view I did, which we have a very, very long street. We're not like Bronxville where we can put in lots of businesses in a very small area. But I think getting the business owners together as part of the Chamber of Commerce and some self-help, I think would go a long way.
All right, this is a question from Claire Personas, 64 Maple Avenue.
We don't have an opportunity to, go ahead, it's fine. I want to hear what Claire has to say. She's I'm still unclear of the rebuttal rules, but seriously, next question. I think they made the point. No, not rebut, but I just wanted to share some of our ideas. But let's ask the question, Maggie, sorry.
Save it for your closing statement, okay?
Oh, I will.
Okay, Claire Persanis, 64 Maple Avenue. I see traffic violations every day, people running stop signs, speeding, making U-turns. I feel there's a lack of enforcement. At a February meeting of the trustees, Chief Palace said the department had issued 75 tickets in January. That is an average of 2.5 tickets per day, less than 1 ticket per 8-hour shift. Do you think this is an acceptable number? Leroy?
I guess this is to me. Well, I gotta be honest with you. I don't know if you understand, there's only 3 police officers in patrol cars during the day and also at night. There's 3. You have a square mile. They obviously can't be anywhere. We do not have quotas. We never had quotas. I'm talking like I'm still a police officer. There are no quotas. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. If you have a stop sign and people are speeding all the time, call the chief of police. If you know where people are making U-turns, call the chief of police. He'll have somebody in front of your house. You have 3 police cars. They can't be everywhere. But we can't change how many tickets the police officers write. But that's something that the police department, you can meet with the police department, we would meet with the police department to encourage enforcement. But just so you know, you're going to find out more village people will get tickets and then won't be happy.
Mr. Mullen is
Sure, let me just chime in
itching
on
to
this.
talk.
So there is a little bit of an enforcement issue. Just so you know, those tickets are lower because when we move a cop to an area, then people don't behave that way, right? So it's a little bit like whack-a-mole. And there does need to be more enforcement, and we need to move those cars around so that people know that there's a presence. And the second thing we need to do, we started a comprehensive traffic study a year ago, and one of the big recommendations was to swap out all of our streetlights from the south end of town to the north end of town, so that they're timed together, so right now we have old infrastructure. Basically, it's red for a while, then it's green for a while, and it's red for a while, and it's green for a while, and by the time you get to any of the exits, you're so frustrated that if you're going down a side street and you see a stop sign, you just kind of sneak through it. That's what's happening. So I think that's the best thing, and we're already working with our state representatives to try and accomplish that, because it's pretty expensive. Thank you.
I found, Lisa, I found one for you. Josie Carbone at 217 Highbrook North. What are your ideas for how we could support the small businesses in our downtown shopping area?
Thank you. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Josie. So I was at the Chamber of Commerce meeting with the other candidates a few weeks ago, and it was great. I was a little disappointed by the turnout, and I know we have a new head of Chamber of Commerce, and he's doing such a wonderful job. So I would love that community to grow, and I think that would be step one, is to just have a dialogue and a continued dialogue with them. I do think that the proposed developments will bring population to the village that will shop at the retail stores that we already have, and we'll have first-class opportunities for first-class retail in these buildings. We've seen it in other villages. We've seen it in other villages in Westchester. Maplewood, New Jersey is just doing so well with their new buildings that included 21 units, no students, and a Starbucks. So I'm sorry I said the S word, but I feel like if our town got one, it would be a good thing. Thank you.
Anything?
Clearly from perspective of going down our downtown Fifth Avenue, we will all see a number of vacant stores. One has to ask the question why that is so and how they can remain vacant for so long. What I would say is some of it potentially has to do with the way stores are taxed versus homestead. It's taxed on an income and expense basis. What that means is the owners of the buildings can write off expenses against the income. If they don't generate income, the taxes go down. Guess who funds the upkeep of the building? It's all of you and me in terms of our property taxes. Okay, so that's one issue. But the other point I wanted to raise is in terms of citing studies or looking at other places in the surrounding areas, Maplewood, New Jersey. One of the things that the developers cite is a Rutgers study. Interestingly, and they use that to estimate the number of students coming into our schools. Rutgers study, right in the first 2 pages, says this only applies to New Jersey. Very different than a village sitting on the edge of New York City, one of the biggest cities in the country, with an effective transit system into Grand Central in 30 minutes. It's apples and oranges. It's disingenuous. These are not appropriate studies to compare to Pelham.
I believe New Jersey also borders New York City and has a great transit system. I don't know New Jersey well, but I just...
It's a very, I do know Maplewood, it's a very different town than Pelham. I can tell you that for sure.
How so?
Well, I think it's a little bit more, it doesn't go into Grand Central. And I'll also tell you this about the retail. I feel like we have to think about being realistic, and I think that when I look at the world, I see very little successful retail going on because people are mostly shopping online. And even to Ariel's point about the foot traffic and changing, like, you know, no cars and having people walk through. What about the Ubers? What about the delivery? It is going to cause volume and it's going to put a strain, and that's why we want to look at and measure. Smart development. We're thinking we can slow it down and we can measure. Guess what? It is an exciting time, and we're going to be in a position to exactly see, because of the new structures that come up. We have the new building on Lincoln. We have 8 Boulevard West coming. We have things happening that for once, instead of trying to do best practices, in fairness, we haven't gotten to see how these things will play out. We're going to have that time for the first time in a long time in Pelham's history. I think it's wonderful to gather our own data and see how it is unique to us.
So we do know how to fix our downtown. We've known it since 2008. And we've been caught up in all of these debates for so long that we haven't taken any action. You know what we learned in 2008? We learned that you need mixed-use developments to have a contiguous storefront all the way across, all the way down our main corridor. Now, we were ranked 30th by Westchester Magazine. You know who was ranked in the top 3? Bronxville and Larchmont, and they're both doing mixed-use developments.
I would argue that they're already established camps. They're not trying to create a retail environment. Their conversation right now is about how to maintain and preserve their existing retail environment that was established for years. It's 2 different things altogether.
No, it wasn't.
Tax base is a factor as well, folks.
Okay.
Okay. I just was handed something here that it may be news to me. Maybe you could confirm this. Gary Heyer says that you lost the grant for flood control?
Which grant
We
is
didn't,
this?
you didn't,
Oh,
Did you-
yes, thank you for bringing it up. So as soon as I came onto the board, we had these grants that we had had for, I don't know exactly how long, maybe 5 or 6 years. It had been going back for a long time. So I came onto the board, and I see a couple $100,000 that we could use for, to help with our stormwater drainage system from Glenwood Lake all the way down to the Hutchinson River. And they were about to expire. All of them were about to expire in 6 months. One of them was going to expire in a year. And Pete Pataki and I toured the area. It turns out some of the flooding has been remediated a little bit because it's details, but a while back we started just cleaning out the drains a little bit better. But when we started looking at the timeline for how we could actually completely renovate that stormwater drainage system, the grants were for the north end of the system, and we had to start at the south end of the system. So I got to tell you, when I realized we've got, I think it was maybe 300, maybe close to $500,000 worth of grant money that hadn't been used for 6 years, and now there was no way that we were going to be able to take advantage of them, it made me pretty furious.
can you apply for some more?
We can, but we have to do a full design of the system.
So he says the north end by Glenwood, so that would be 7th Avenue, the 500 block.
Right.
I want to let you know I grew up on 8th Avenue, and I'm not telling a story, a little boy story here, but when it flooded, we would get our little rowboat, blow it up, and where the Fisherman's Net is, where you all know, 6th Street, I would row my little rowboat. At one time, we even jumped and swam in Lely Waller's garage at 519 because there was plenty of water. 3 months ago, we had a torrential downpour, and guess what? I wanted to go get my little rowboat again because it still floods. The Fisherman's Net was flooded, the garages were flooded, and it was flooded. So thanks for blowing the $100,000 and not addressing the north end of town.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, here's a question from Tracy Doka of 48 Benedict Place to Ariel. What would you say to property owners on Marcon that have suffered loss of property value now that they are in the shadow of the 8 Boulevard building?
Well, first of all, if they have suffered property value, these are one of, it's difficult. It's not something I don't make decisions for my community lightly. I think very deeply about them. Before there was a building there was a vacant lot and a Con Ed substation. It was not a pretty site either. I think that as this building goes up, there will be things that will be done by the developer to make it look better, for sure. And we also have to think in terms of the community, in terms of our property values, that revitalizing our downtown helps everyone's property values, including the people who may be impacted more directly than others by a single development. So, unfortunately, I sympathize and I understand that it may not have been their preference. But I do think it will help everybody's property values, including theirs, to make our downtown better and more desirable.
Okay.
Response?
What, you want to rebut?
Yeah, I would like to. So look, I think part of the issue in development that the folks from the village should be aware of has to do with the tax structure, okay? And so the rental units, for example, 120 unit rental will bring in about $500,000 in property taxes to the village. If that same unit was half condo, where it's owner occupied or people own it, okay, and pay homestead-based rates, okay, that's $1 million in tax revenue. If it's fully homestead, it's 1.5 million. The point here is, folks, if we don't bring enough revenue in, we cannot sustain the budget of our village, we cannot sustain our schools. It costs $25,000 per child to educate in Pelham. If there's a special needs child, that's 60 to 70 grand. This is a lot of money, and rental units, listen, no offense to the developers, will make money for the developers, okay? And it really, what this comes down to is how much of that money is going to come into the village.
Okay, this is a question, we're going back to
Can I respond to that?
No.
If anyone has questions about it, just find me after.
We're going back to the developments, okay? Maura O'Malley, 208 Carroll Avenue. Transit-oriented developments are being pursued by most communities across the United States. In Westchester, Scarsdale, Bronxville, Mount Kisco, and New Rochelle, of course. Why are some of your candidates opposed to transit-oriented development?
I don't think we are opposed to transit-oriented development. We are opposed to transit-oriented rental development that does not affect the tax base and is based on wildly optimistic ideas. To give an example, not all, there are some studios and one bedrooms, but if you look at these developments, and some of them are for empty nesters, they assume a little bit over 1 car per couple. And I talked to an empty nester that I know who lives near here, and I said, well, what do you think about that? Would you be happy sharing a car with your husband? And she said, it's interesting. We tried that, It was horrendous. It was terribly stressful. We were going all over the place, and I would never do it again. I think 1 car per empty nest married couple is highly optimistic. I don't like the internal combustion engine any more than anyone here. That's why, frankly, I want to keep more of them out of this town. And the same thing is true, I'll do very quickly, with millennials. I don't know that too many millennials, I asked a millennial, would you ride Metro North for 30 minutes or would you take the subway back to Brooklyn? They said it's a big difference. He's a 30-year-old guy. It doesn't feel like I'm going anywhere when I take Metro North late at night. I'm happy to take the subway back to Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Chance.
Okay, so first of all on taxes. 101 Wolf's Lane, when it's built, will absorb 15% of the annual cost of our new school. 8 Boulevard West, when it's built, will absorb 10 to 12% of the annual cost of the new school. The firehouse deal that we're trying to put together would absorb close to 1/3 of the cost of the new school. So just because they're rentals does not mean that they are not bringing in tax revenue. And everyone pays taxes. Renters pay through their rent, and then the property owner pays taxes. Now, here's the thing. If you want housing for young professionals, empty nesters, and seniors, people without kids, you have to go for rentals. Because 101 Wolf's Lane has 650 square foot studios. Good luck trying to find a 25-year-old kid who's going to take out a mortgage to get a 650 square foot studio as a condo.
All right, this is from Mike Michike at 110 Pelhamdale Avenue for Mr. Mullen.
Okay.
Can you please tell us how many luxury rental units are planned for construction in New Rochelle for the next 2 years? And how does Pelham plan to compete for tenants?
Sure. So the first thing to understand is that every one of the units that we're considering takes a very long time. They're all staggered. And you should know, if you're concerned about the market, look at 8 Boulevard West. It's halfway through being built, and there is so much interest in that one property that we actually have somebody who left Pelham who is moving back to Pelham. There is so much interest that the developer now wants to convert it to condos that he can sell 16 condos at $1 to $1.2 million a piece. The market is so hot. It is hot throughout all of Westchester. So every one of these developers, they are here because they want to make money. And they're betting millions of dollars on it. For our position, we should simply say, okay, then do something for us. Have them earn it like they do through the BDFZ. Let's institute a fair share fee. With 101 Wolf's Lane, we were able to negotiate $750,000 over the course of 15 years that can be used for traffic remediation in that area. We wouldn't have the money for that if we didn't have that project. That's how we use this.
Well, just one.
Can I rebut that?
Go for it.
Okay, so the answer to the question is like.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. How do you plan to compete with New Rochelle for tenants?
Oh, right. Well, it's all going to come in over time. I don't know how to answer that question. There's.
What attracts people to Pelham?
What attracted you to Pelham?
What attracts people to Pelham?
Schools.
No,
Schools,
actually, so here's the thing.
Okay.
Okay, do you want me to answer this? Here's the thing.
I think this
That's
is
up to
a
the,
debate for the candidates.
I don't think that's up to him to tell you what's going to attract them to Pelham. That's up to the marketing.
The question,
Guys.
the question that was asked to Chance was, how many apartments do you know are being built in New Rochelle? Currently, New Rochelle has a plan with between 4,400, almost 4,500 build apartments, rentals, condos. They're 31 minutes from New York City. We're 29 minutes. They have 270-degree views of Long Island Sound. They have their downtown, they have restaurants. The question is, so why come to Pelham if I can go to New Rochelle and live in this beautiful high-rise? The reason why you come to Pelham is simple. It's for the school system. And
Is that why you live here?
I live here because I was born here, Chance.
Because you care about it.
My parents were born here,
Okay,
Chance.
okay, no
And my
crosstalk,
grandparents
no
migrated
crosstalk.
here, Chance.
Okay,
That's why
okay,
I'm here.
okay.
But with
All
that, the developers should know.
Okay.
And with the
Look, it's
schools,
10,
you have to
almost
know the
10 to
numbers
9,
of fudge.
to
And
9.
I'm going to give you a perfect example. The building next to the firehouse, which is fine. It looks like the firehouse. It's the same height. There's 6 rental units in it. First of all, they've only allotted for 5 cars. That's against the zoning board. So they're telling one
No,
person,
no.
listen, if you move here,
No.
you can't park. The
Wait,
second thing is,
wait.
there are 4 of-age school children in 6 units. I wasn't good in math. I went to school here. My parents sent me. That's 75%. You're getting estimates of, like 8%. Well, if you build 6 units and there's 4 kids in it, what's going to happen when you build 30 units? Let's see. By what's happened, that's 15. Let's go to 120. What's half of 120, Chance? Did you go to school at Pelham? 60.
Leroy.
So
Brilliant.
Leroy. Leroy. Excuse me.
Don't go
Excuse
next
me.
Pelham, Chance.
Leroy.
Maggie,
Excuse
can we
me,
bring-
Mr. Marriott.
Are we allowed to bring facts into
Excuse
the
me,
debate?
Mr. Marriott. We have
Temperature's
to-
increasing
Can we,
in this
can we
room
bring some
here.
facts into the conversation?
We need to have a few facts on how many
Yeah.
parking
Okay,
spaces
tell me
there
how
are.
you rebut.
There are 9 units, there are 9 parking spaces, that's what was approved.
Where?
Now,
At that-
for the record, that building was built under the old code.
Where the
The BDFC would not have applied there, did not apply there. That's the old code. What we're trying to do is exactly the opposite. We want to work with a collaborative process with these developers to build units that will not attract kids.
Where are the parking spaces?
And let me add,
They're on the ground floor.
Wait,
There's
you can
5
ask
and
him
Leroy.
afterwards
There's
where the
5
parking
and 1
spaces
disabled.
The
are.
site plan is available online.
The site plan is online. You can,
I count
You could also
spaces.
just drive over and look at it, too.
and you can count them, and we will check it, and we will find out the facts on exactly how many parking spaces there are and how many children there are, because this is the first time I've heard
There's 4.
anyone come up with all
I
that
act-
kind of information.
I actually know the information. Can I say it?
What?
I know the information.
Secret?
There's 2 preschoolers. 2 preschoolers that a young couple, they're trying out Pelham. Marbury Corners, 55 units, 3 kids. It's funny how, we're parents. So the people we
Okay,
often
let's
interact
save that
with,
for the
the people we interact with are other parents, and we think
We
that's
have
the
to
only
do the
reason that people want to live here.
Marbury Corners
We
is not
only-
a rental.
We have to come to a
Part of it is.
close. I'm very sorry. You can talk to these people all you want. You have a few more days of the campaign, but this debate has to come to a close. So we're going to have closing statements. My timekeepers have reminded me, what do we have? 2-minute closing statements. And we do it in reverse order of what we had as the speaking order. So we start with Lisa Hillrise.
Thank you, Maggie. First, I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight, this amazing crowd. The only way a government is successful is with input from its people. And I appreciate that you're all taking time to learn the complexities of these issues. I'd also like to thank my family and friends for their unfailing support through this process. One more week, and then the real work begins. Guys, I love this village. I'm raising my kids here because of its schools, the proximity to the greatest city in the world, and its deep sense of community. And there's also that indescribable Pelham magic that exists in running into your best friend, buying cheese at DeChico's, catching an impromptu movie at the Picture House, or power walking through Wolf's Lane Park. I couldn't imagine living anywhere else. But preserving all of this doesn't have to hinder progress. Pelham doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's not Bedford Falls or Mayberry or even Stars Hollow. It's a living, breathing village that presents challenges along with its many, many attributes. Villages all over Westchester are facing similar infrastructure needs, taxes that continue to increase, and vacant storefronts. The Pelham Forward team is already working on thoughtful solutions on these issues. We want our village to thrive in this 21st century world. So please cast your vote for me on Tuesday because I work hard to get things done right. My tenure in the Junior League is proof of this. My many years in the private sector, followed by almost a decade of working for Mayor Michael Bloomberg, have prepared me to think critically and work efficiently. And I'm not afraid to ask as many questions as I have to in order to learn everything I need to know about an issue. Just ask these guys. I appreciate hard work, research, and grit. I am a collaborative leader who admires people that get in there and are willing to tell the truth and do the work, and not just criticize from the sidelines. I have always believed that the best leaders create policies that benefit the entire community, not just their friends or the fraction they're familiar with. And I hope you will vote for the entire Pelham Forward slate on Tuesday, March 19th. Thank you.
Leroy Marriott.
I thanked you in my opening statement, but I really want to thank my family, my wife and my daughter, because the past 3 weeks we've been taken away from our families, digging in hard and trying to do what's best here. I'm not a politician. I'm a retired cop. But the bottom line is, I know Pelham, you know Pelham, we know Pelham. This debate stuff, it's fun, it's not fun, it gets ugly, but let's just sit back and realize what we're talking about. We're talking about the Pelham we grew up in, the Pelham we really loved. I honestly think it's changing and it's becoming a different Pelham. It's not the Pelham my family's been in for 100 years. It's not the family I've brought my children up. It's not the family the village I was brought up in. We've assembled a team here of very, very qualified people. I want to say great people because they're our neighbors. We're all neighbors. Let's stop this political, north and south, east and west, left and right. Let's talk about Pelham, okay? We want to make and keep Pelham Pelham. Let's do it slow. Let's not put it in the hands of developers. Let's not sell our land. Let's just be each other. Let's be Pelham residents, and let this be about Pelham. We're qualified to keep it Pelham. Thank you very much for your time.
Candace Stripple.
Okay. I just really want to thank everybody for giving us an opportunity to speak to these issues. I feel remiss in not mentioning, Chance touched on the new school, and I think a really big part of why we are here as a whole is recognizing that Pelham is in fact getting a new Hutchinson school, and there was a bond passed that's going to also have a positive effect on the other schools in our district. I think that people do in fact come here for 3 primary reasons. Proximity to the city, we are a safe community with an excellent school district. And I'm saying this, let's think about the fact, divisive or not, agree or disagree, we have as a whole, as a community, the people of Pelham have invested tens of millions of dollars into a new school. And I do not believe as a community we have put that investment there for any kind of philanthropic goodwill effort. It's nice, it's going to be good for the children, it'll be nice. However, we are believing as a whole that this is an investment and an economic investment in our community. I feel very strongly that we have to protect that. That building is going to be built at the capacity that it was when the bond was passed. In terms of the developers, there's nothing wrong with the developer coming in. I appreciate different ways of moving it forward and all the good ideas, but we must keep in mind a developer's job is to make money. It's appropriate. They come in to make money. I am saying we have a whole thing coming that's economic development coming in. We have invested in our community. Developers will come and invest in our community. I believe that that want will always be there. There will be developers who want to come in after the new school, after things are up and we get to measure. And I'm asking that we take a pause and really think about something that is being based on something from 2008. Times are changing before us quicker than we can imagine. And I think that you would be in very good hands and almost remiss in not putting us forward as your leadership for the next couple of years. Thank you for this opportunity, and have a great night.
Mr. Long.
I'm sorry, is that me?
Oh, I'm sorry, Chance, sorry. I'm looking at the wrong list.
Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. On day one, the next mayor will walk into a negotiation with the police department on the verge of arbitration, a garbage contract that could go south at any moment, a budget cycle that actually starts before they're sworn in, a staffing situation with new leadership in almost every department. Development is just one of the 100 things the next mayor will have to grapple with, and they will not be joining this work. They must lead it. I am ready to do that. I ran for trustee 2 years ago because I wanted to show my son that the world around him was not just something that would happen to him, it's something he could affect and sculpt and change. I wanted him to see that you don't have to be wealthy or popular to get involved. I knew, as I know now, that this village will forever be a part of who he is. And I wanted him to know that I take that so seriously, because I do. I'm not running for mayor because there was an empty seat and someone had to fill it. I didn't organize a full ticket just so we could beat the other guys. I'm also not running for mayor because I think I'm the greatest person ever to run for mayor of all time. I don't. But I do think I'm the right person to be mayor at this time. Thank you so much for letting me be your trustee for the last 2 years. I've loved every second of it. And I hope I get to be your mayor for the next 2. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Long.
Thank you very much. I think what is most wonderful about this evening is that there are so many people here who want to hear contrasting arguments about the future of Pelham. Before I get into a few remarks, I do want to say that in trying to get up to speed over the last few weeks, I've attended quite a few of the trustee meetings, and I think people there, we're very lucky. People work very, very hard and are very, very caring about our village. I think, so this is not anything personal. It certainly isn't anything political or a party thing. Indeed, I think on the critical issue, I think this actually breaks down in a very interesting fashion, and a lot of it may depend on how long you've actually been in town or your skepticism about a development. I do want to say one thing to address what Mr. Carpenter said, which was there was all this great real estate activity going around in the mid-2000s, and we didn't get anything of it. There were a lot of communities, I know this because the only time I probably worked harder than the last couple of weeks was in the financial crisis. There were many, many communities around this country that took the flavor of the day back then, which was home ownership built on subprime mortgages that people couldn't pay. And those ruined communities. And in fact, the people who were ruined the most were the people who actually had the least to lose. Now, that makes me a little bit skeptical of the flavor of the day. The question wasn't answered by Mr. Mullen, but there are 4,000 or maybe 5,000 rentals in New Rochelle. What is that going to do for the market? What are all these rentals? If you live in Marbury Corners and you pay homestead property taxes and people can rent something that's equivalent, what does that do to your property value? If you live in the part of town where the parking is going to go away and not as much parking is going to put back, people, where the car is going to go, particularly, and there are going to be more than the one car per family that the developers tell us. I think this election is about facts on one of the most important issues today, and I think that this slate has the better of it. Thank you.
Mike Carpenter.
Thank you, Maggie, for moderating tonight, and thank you to the staff of the Pelham Examiner for keeping time. It's not an easy task. And thank you to everyone for coming out tonight to participate and hear directly from us. If you didn't get a chance to ask your question, please track us down afterwards or come to our live Facebook event tomorrow night at 7 at Pelham Forward. 7 years ago, with thoughts of kindergarten on our minds, Kate and I faced a choice. Where do we want to raise our family? On the advice of friends and luckily finding a house that fit our budget, we moved to Pelham with our girls, Lila and Casey. Both Kate and I are from small towns where we spent our weekends out biking with our friends, playing in the street, sometimes not seeing our parents for hours on end. We didn't fully appreciate it when we moved to Chester Park, but we hit the jackpot when we moved to Pelham. When it's nice outside, Lila and Casey disappear on their bikes, only to return hours later, sometimes with the entire Chester Park bike posse in tow. Today, our village is facing a choice. Our infrastructure has been held together with duct tape, plastic wrap, and staples for too long. But because of the time and effort put in by Mayor Volpe, the Board of Trustees, and the community, the village has attracted a significant interest and investment into our community. Investment that can make our streets safer. Investment that can reinvigorate our downtown. Investment that can build a new firehouse for the 21st century. That's why I'm excited to be up here with Chance, Ariel, and Lisa. We are deeply committed to Pelham. We have hands-on village government experience, and we share a common vision of how we can move Pelham forward for the next generation. I am so happy that Kate and I chose Pelham for our family, and on March 19th, I hope that Pelham chooses me. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. So thank you, everyone. My fellow running mates and I are running for office as trustees and mayor because we care about Pelham deeply. And we also believe we have the abilities to take Pelham into the future. With respect to the discussion about development, what I would say is development can either make our village or break our village. This is something we both, or all of us, need to be mindful of. The wrong development can certainly cause large challenges for us down the road. We need to go forward with development in this village that is economically sustainable and environmentally sustainable as well in terms of green space, et cetera. And also taking into account pedestrian safety, parking, and most of all, maybe not most of all, but certainly a positive turn for our downtown, which certainly could use some invigoration. And we hope the folks can bring themselves to the polls and think about what we've discussed tonight and cast your votes for the most qualified candidates. Thank you all.
Ariel Spiricon, please.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone for coming tonight and to the candidates for this exchange of ideas. I love so many things about Pelham, but I also believe that there are ways we can improve Pelham. It is not always about doing what's been done before, or what is popular, or what is best for 1 or 2 or 10 individuals. It's about balancing the interests of all 7,000 of my friends and neighbors here. Believe me when I say from experience, this takes a lot more than common sense. I want to continue the work I've started. I want to see a bustling, safe, walkable downtown with children enjoying our beautifully redone park. I want to see empty nesters with options to stay in our community if they choose to downsize. I want to see a better diversity of retailers downtown. I want to see us make the top 10 list downtown of Westchester County, which I'm missing the list. I want us to adopt a forward-thinking perspective where we focus on moving people, not cars. Imagine a Pelham where ride-sharing, scooters, biking, and perhaps a trolley were all part of the streetscapes. When you vote on Tuesday, please don't just consider names you recognize or whether you like someone from PTA. Vote for the Pelham Forward slate with concrete solutions to our increasing tax burden and solutions for our infrastructure problems. Otherwise, we'll be sitting here next year with even worse infrastructure problems, a worse credit rating, more debt, unavoidably higher taxes. Don't let anyone fool you into thinking there's an easy answer out there that we just haven't found. Doing nothing is not really a plan. I hope that my dedication over the past 2 years has earned your vote. Whether the issue is parking regulations or downtown revitalization or garbage pickup or any of the many issues that come before our board, we need people who can dig deep, ask difficult questions, and problem solve effectively. If elected, I promise to do my very best to help us move Pelham forward in an inclusive, collective, and sustainable way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Don't leave. I just want to remind you to vote on Tuesday. Everybody gets. Everybody went. I didn't forget that. Okay. I want everybody. Wait. We're still on camera, please. There are people who will be watching this, and they need to be reminded to vote on Tuesday. I know all of you know to vote on Tuesday. The polls will be open at 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. All voting for Village of Pelham residents will be at the Durango Townhouse. This video, as I said earlier, will be seen on the school Cablevision Channel 75 and Verizon Fios Channel 43 during the weekend and on Monday before the election. And it'll be on Pelham Plus and it'll be on the Pelham Examiner. I thank Pelham Examiner for joining me in sponsoring this, and I thank the candidates. Now you can go home.